Welcome into the 21 Days of Prayer podcast for 2025. We are stoked here at REVO Church to be kicking off another year of this wonderful tradition where we get to come together at the beginning of every year, take 3 weeks to build this habit of prayer, to establish the foundation of a relationship with God for the new year. That's what we hope for 2025. I've got my, I'll call him my co-host since he did that for me on so many podcasts recently. I got my co-host Jamie Spry with me today. Thanks for being here, Jamie.
Oh man, I'm so excited to be here. This is this is the pinnacle of what we do when we talk about prayers. We believe and we talk and we know the science behind it. It says if you want to build a habit, it takes 21 days to build a habit. And so when everyone's like, why is it 21 days of prayer? Why is it not like 5 days of prayer or 30 days? Well, it's because it takes 21 days to build a habit. And so we always jump in 21 days because we're like, if you can start 21 days of seeking God, reading his word, praying, that hopefully that'll build a habit for you. And so
hopefully
I'm so
it'll go from 21 to 365.
That's the goal. That's why we do this.
That's the goal.
But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what God's going to do with this year because we're really doing something a little different this year, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm actually kicking you off tomorrow.
Yeah.
And in fact, for those of you all watching and going another year of 21 Days of Prayer podcasts of Matthew and Nathan or Matthew and Jamie or Jamie and Stephen or whoever being stupid, for 10 minutes on a podcast, it's actually going to be very different this year, radically different. I'm kicking Jamie off. He'll only be back 1 or 2 more times. And we're going to have some REVO Church members, some of the other REVO Church staff, some special guests to talk about each of the topics every day. And so Jamie's got these different topics all under this one big theme, and we're going to have people who have studied those topics, who have thought about those, prayed over those, come in to help us talk about that specific topic for the day. So you won't have to hear much from me anymore. You won't have to hear much from Jamie anymore. It's mostly going to be some special guests that we have lined up for this podcast, specifically coordinated with the devotion that we have written out for that day. So that's going to be a big change for us this year in 2025. I want to try something a little new, is coordinate the day and the theme for that day with the devotion for that day. So the podcast and the devotion will be hand in hand. Hopefully you'll be able to read one and listen to the other, or watch, the podcast and really dive in deeper and grow deeper into that stuff. So without further ado, I think we will have already talked a little bit about it on the Sunday before 21 Days of Prayer starts. But let's talk about our theme for 2025.
Yeah, so our theme comes from the book of Ephesians. This was a brainchild that I have been working and forming for a while now. I got the honor, Pastor Nathan come up to me and he was like, hey, 21 Days of Prayer, I want you to handle the written content. And so I was like, awesome, which then immediately ignites like this terror of like, oh man, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? And so I started praying on it. I started seeking God on it. And I come up with this verse. I want to read this verse. It's Ephesians 4, verse 1. It says this. It's Paul speaking. He says, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. And that verse has really stuck with me for the last like 6-8 months when I was thinking through it. Because when we read that verse, what Paul's telling us is that he's telling us 2 big things. He's telling us, number one, if you are a believer in Jesus, if you follow him, if you trust in Jesus, you have a calling. Whatever that may be, whatever that may look like, you have a calling. Whether your calling is full-time ministry, maybe your calling is to preach and teach, maybe your calling is just as simple as living out the truths of Jesus in your daily life, where you eat, work, play, study, and shop. But you have a calling, and that calling is to make Jesus known. The second thing Paul tells us here is not only do you have a calling, but you need to walk worthy of that calling. That if you have this calling of to make Jesus known, to make him seen, that you need to walk worthy of that calling. And so that verse right there, Ephesians 4:1, has just been circling in my brain, Matthew, to where I'm thinking, okay, what if for the next 20 days, so day 1 is going to be talking about you need to walk worthy. If you haven't read day 1 yet, go back and read the study material for day 1. But it's going to talk about how we are called to walk worthy. But then the next 20 days are going to be sitting down and saying, if we are called to walk worthy of the calling to which we've been called, then how can we do that? And so each of the days after day 1 is going to be, well, if you're called to walk worthy, then you need to have humility. If you're going to walk worthy, then you need to be gentle. You need to have gentleness. If you're going to be walking worthy, then you need to love God. You need to love others. You need to forgive people, pray without ceasing, making disciples, being generous. And so each day is going to build on the idea of you have a calling. We all have a calling. And it's going to build on the idea that if you have a calling, then you need to walk worthy of that calling. And so I'm so excited about that.
So it won't be specifically just about prayer every time then, right?
No.
It's not just going to be like this day's on prayer, the next day's on
Yeah.
prayer, the next day's on prayer, but it's actually going to be a little bit different and
Yeah.
and to where we're praying about certain things
Exactly.
rather than every single day of the podcast
Yeah.
and of the study material and the prayer content is about prayer. Instead, it's about maybe generosity one day,
Yeah.
or maybe it is about prayer 1 or 2 days, or for another time it might be about being humble or patient, and
Yeah.
and then we're going to connect those all with
Yep.
prayer, right?
Yep. So each one of the days, so it's going to be a little bit different. Not every day. You're not going to sit down and you're not going to be praying for prayer. You're not going to be praying of, Lord, help me to become a better prayer. Lord,
Mhm.
help me to pray better. Every single day is going to be on a different idea or a different topic of what it means to walk worthy. And then at the end of each day is going to be prayer prompts that say, okay, if I'm called to be generous, then how can I pray to become more generous? How can I pray adoring God in the fact that he is generous? How can I pray in the sense where I'm praying saying, God, give me opportunities to be generous? And so it's connecting in the sense of prayer, in that you are asking, okay, God, I am reading about generosity. Now I'm praying about how can I be generous? And then the goal is that it goes from head knowledge of I'm learning about prayer, heart knowledge of I'm praying to become more generous, and then hands of, okay, God, now that I've learned about generosity, I prayed about generosity, now I'll go and be generous.
Right.
And what's really cool is that you get that opportunity in every single one of those days.
And each day on the podcast will have the expert is what I'm going to call them, come in and share one practical next step, something that you can do that day or that week, so that you don't leave going, all right, I've got in my head what to do. I've heard this stuff. I know more now. And not just, all right, I've prayed about it, but then also we're going to get something really easy, practical to do. Well, maybe not always easy, but it will be practical.
It will be practical.
It will be something that you can do, a next step to take. So I want to zoom in before we end day one. I want to zoom in on the theme of walk worthy. Explain that a little, just slightly, what you mean by walk worthy from Ephesians 4.
Yeah. So I think that, and if you've read the day, you'll see this, but in Ephesians 4, it talks about walking worthy. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at a passage of scripture where we see someone modeling that. And so in day one, you see Acts chapter 16 is listed as reading. And what you see in Acts chapter 16, and I know everyone is like, oh, Acts again.
No, we love Acts.
We love Acts. I love Acts. I feel so bad because we went through an entire series on the book of Acts, and then student ministry. I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to Acts. Like, we just continued. It's such a good, rich book. It's so applicable. Well, here's what you see. You see in Acts chapter 16, you see Paul and Silas, and they are going out and they are living their calling. They are called to go and teach and preach. And so they're doing that and they're sharing the gospel, and they get locked up for it. They get put in jail, and it's a terrible situation. They end up being beaten, and they're put in the very heart, the very center of the jail. And so when they're there, it would be very easy for any one of us today, if we were following Jesus and we had some hardship happen. We might not even end up in jail. Like, our hardship might be that we tell someone about Jesus and they look at us and they just roll their eyes. But we have some type of hardship that happens and we feel like, wow, we can't go on. But listen to what Paul did. I just want to read this one verse, verse 16, or chapter 16, verse 25. So they are in jail at this point. They are in the center. It's Paul and Silas. And it says that at about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. When we're talking about walking worthy of our calling, when we're talking about how we need to love Jesus and walk according to the calling to which you have been called, that's what it looks like. It looks like us when we are in prison, whether it's quite literal prison or the metaphorical prison of someone rolls their eyes when we share the gospel, or we feel like we get made fun of when we wear a Christian t-shirt and someone looks at it and is like, I don't know about that. We're talking about staying faithful just like Paul and Silas did.
And then being able to have the people around you see that, just like you read at the end of verse 25, where because we know what God is worth.
Yeah.
We know how worthy God is. Therefore, our lives start to take shape and look like that, and start to look more like Jesus, and other people around us start to notice it. So that it said, even when we're in prison or something's going wrong and we're praising God for all he's worth, because he is worthy, and we living that life, or walking worthy, to use our theme language, then it said the prisoners were listening.
Yeah.
It's like other people around you are going to be listening. And as we know in the rest of that story, people come to saving faith in Jesus because of Paul and Silas.
Because of their faithfulness.
That's what we mean by walk worthy.
Something I love about that story is that at the end, so while all of that's happening, Paul and Silas are in jail. They're praising God, when every normal person would be like, no, they're walking worthy, praising him. We see an earthquake happen. The walls of the prison are gone. All the prisoners' chains have been broken. The jailer comes in and he looks and he sees that everyone, in his assumption, everyone's gone. It's the middle of the night. It's midnight. Earthquake. Chains are gone. Walls are gone. The jailer goes to take his own life, because here's what would happen. If him being the one in charge of the prisoners escaped, he would be the one whose life would be taken. Him, and most likely his family, because he failed on his job. And so what the jailer was thinking was, if I take my life, they're going to save my family's life, because they'll think that they attacked me as well. And right as he's about to do it, Paul and Silas yell out and say, we are all here. Not just Paul and Silas.
Yeah, but all the prisoners.
We are all here.
Yeah, that's great.
All the prisoners in the jail are still in the jail, despite being in chains, despite the chains are broken. They could have easily fled, and yet Paul said, we are all here. And why are they here? I truly believe they are here because they saw the life and the ministry of Paul. They saw that Paul was in jail for his faith, and yet is still praising Jesus. And I believe that they saw that. They caught what it means to follow Jesus. And I truly believe that the prisoners, though it is not told in Acts 16, I believe that those prisoners come to a saving faith in Jesus because of the faith of Paul and Silas. Because if not, why would they not have left?
Yep.
Why would Paul say we are all here? Why would it not be, well, me and Silas are still here?
Don't worry, there's just two of us still here.
There's just two of us. The rest of them are gone.
Right. I love that. It's a great way to kick off 21 Days of Prayer for 2025. It's an exciting theme, walking worthy, but I think even more exciting is the fact that people won't have to listen to us every day.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They'll have some expert on that topic that we have invited in to share on those things. And so we're really excited for 21 Days of Prayer in 2025, and hope that this will be something that is a blessing to you and your relationship with Jesus, that as we put God's worth on display in the way that we live, others will notice it, be captivated by it, and want to walk worthy of their new calling in Jesus as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow.